What's going on? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Leaders. My name's Mike. I'm your host. Let's get it going.
You're alive in us. We're alive in you.
Well, the four words for today's episode are small changes, big impact. I'm going to say it again. Small changes, big impact. And I'm joined today by one of our regular contributors, Mike Bunfill.
How y'all doing today?
Everyone's doing great. How about yourself?
I am fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get this unpacked and to kind of have this conversation with you about small changes having a big impact. So we'll just give the general idea first. You know, it seems like many times in life you just get overwhelmed. You just do. It's like there's so many things going on at one time. You know, with your family and with your career and with your social circles and friends, maybe with your health, all different things. And it seems like it all just is overwhelming to the point of paralysis. Mm-hmm. Like you can't even move, and when we get to that point, the idea of this is to try and let go of the things we can't control anyways, and to try to focus on what we can control. And instead of trying to make huge, massive changes in every circle of our life, which usually don't work, try to make these small changes that in the areas that we can control, and just see how that dominoes of good changes could lead to good consequence.
Absolutely.
How about you? I mean, have you ever had times in your life when you just felt overwhelmed? I knew the answer, but I had to ask for our audience.
But just once? So many times. The thing that I've gotten to know, though, at my age, I'm 55, is that
Still young.
Regardless of what I'm going through in life, is that God is always with me. It can be the best day, and I look around, and I see God with me. It can be the worst day of my life, and I look around, and I still see God with me. So the small change for me was just a mental change to realize it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. I'm still in the hands of God.
Wow. Now, that's some wisdom right there. I want to stop there for a second. I love that. So you're saying at 55, which means you've been through some things.
Quite a few things.
A few more than me, but not as far as some might think, right? But you're saying that one of the small changes that had big impacts in your life was just realizing that God is not abandoned. He's not abandoned you.
Ever.
That he's always there.
Ever. Regardless of what I've been through. Like I said, sometimes I can see it when I'm in the middle of it. Sometimes it takes a retrospect to look back and see that he was there with me. But 100% of the time, I've always known that he's been with me.
Isn't that amazing, though? Because I think what happens is we tend to think when life is going good, God is with us and he's on our side. But then when life is going bad, maybe not in our minds, but in our hearts, we begin to think maybe God's mad at me and he's just kind of walked away for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've talked to a lot of young people, like I'm talking teenagers and in their 20s, and that's really what they think.
I mean, it's really hard to understand the love of God because we're used to our secular earthly fathers, and sometimes those relationships aren't great. So whenever something's going bad, you think, oh, God's mad at me, I'm getting punished. And that's never the situation, never the case.
Man, you're saying so many things we could unpack here. It's hard to know which way to go, but I do think of, it's the old poem of the footprints in the sand. And I don't remember how the whole thing goes, but there were two sets of footprints, and then, the person looked back during hard times, so there was only one. And that's what, a lot of this generation thinks, is that God's abandoned me. Right. He's mad at me. He's walked away. Maybe if I do good again, he'll come back, although it's not our works that do it, but that's what we think, Yep. And so here you are at 55, and you're saying that you're at this point where you've looked back, and like the author of that poem, you kind of realize that the footprints in the sand were Jesus carrying you.
100% of the time. And
I like that. That's perfect. We weren't even planning to go that way, but that's awesome. So another thing that kind of comes into mind here then is, I'm a health and wellness director. I know that you're really big into your health journey, which I'll let you share about that a little bit. But I work with people all the time, and the reason that I can work with them usually pretty well is because of my own testimony. So from, the size I used to be, 130 pounds bigger than today, it's overwhelming. If I thought, 20 years ago, I had to lose 130 pounds, I would have never been able to do it. I just wouldn't have. But I didn't think that way. I thought I need to lose weight before I get married. That is the first thing that pushed me on my weight loss journey was May 8th, 2004. I knew I was getting married, and I was like, man, I'm just a little bit too big right here. So, those first 6 months able to drop 60 pounds, I dropped down to 290. That was what pushed me. And you could say, well, that's a weird motive or whatnot, but it worked, right?
You got to find something that works for it.
That's
for
right.
sure.
So these small changes that I have made along the way had a big impact. But I know you also kind of have a story with how you eat and how it's affected your body. So go ahead and just share about that.
So 2 years ago in March, it'll be 3 years ago coming up this March, my wife and I decided to try veganism. Her cholesterol was really high. So we started eating the vegan diet. And
Now, for those who don't know, veganism is
no dairy, no meat.
no dairy, no meat. So no byproducts. so to
Nothing from an
speak.
animal.
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Sorry, just in case they don't know. Carry on.
So her cholesterol went from like 186 down to 118 in I'm not sure how long the period of time was, probably 4 months.
Wow. That's still good. That's good.
And I've never felt better physically. I feel healthy. I have energy. It's an amazing feeling, and people just can't understand how I can not eat meat.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this isn't the plug for veganism necessarily.
Right.
I'm not vegan. But the point here is that you also, like you were talking before about your shoulder and pains you had and stuff,
yeah.
right? And probably from inflammation. right?
Correct. My right shoulder has been bad for quite a while, and I'd walk around just in pain every day. And then as soon as I started eating, like 2 weeks after starting the diet, I can't say diet, the lifestyle.
Yeah.
My shoulder pain, I noticed that my shoulder wasn't hurting.
Okay.
So it's just, there's so many benefits of eating the vegan way.
So some people might say that wasn't really a small change, right? For some people, like, especially if you just love your ice cream or whatever, if you're like me, you may not think that that's a small change. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you're still eating food, right? You're still eating probably as often as you want to or whatnot, but you've changed what you're eating. The small change was the type of food that you eat
Correct.
and the quality of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And then that's had a lifelong change for both of you. And this is a great example. I didn't even know about the cholesterol. I never had actually heard that part of the story before, but people who come in to see me, usually a lot of times they'll say, I just came from my doctor and, so I know when they start with that, because they come to us to get started on their fitness journey, and so it could be a lot of times high cholesterol or blood pressure.
Right.
Or diabetes, pre-diabetes. That's a big one right now that a lot of people have been coming in for. And, I love that they come for help, because the opposite of that is what happens is people just shut down.
Right.
They just shut down and they can't do it. They can't think about, maybe I'm a person who my parent died of diabetes, and now I found out I'm pre-diabetic, and it paralyzes.
Correct.
It paralyzes you to the point to where oftentimes you just feel like there's nothing that you can do. Like, I'm doomed to die. And so, when they do come and they step out of that and they're willing to make, really in the grand scheme of life, eating a little bit better and working out 3 times a week, that's a small change, right?
Right.
It's a small change with a big impact.
I mean, just eating differently is really a small change in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Right. Although I will say I did try a vegan for a minute, and I do not have the willpower as of yet that you do.
Well, you can still have cheese and dairy, but it's all non-dairy. It's all vegan cheese. There's no milk in it or anything like that. But
Ooh, half of our listeners just slightly fainted where they were. No, I'm just kidding. So the passage that we have for today to talk about small changes, big impact. Once again, we're not just talking about your diet and things. We're talking about every aspect of your life. This is just conversation to put it into perspective. But it comes from Zechariah 4. And, in Zechariah, the exiles had returned from Babylon to Jerusalem, and they were really waiting for God's promises to come to pass. They had been waiting, in their eyes, they'd been waiting a long time, and nothing seemed to be moving. And like, hey, where's the temple you promised to rebuild? And where's the wall and all these things? And so Zechariah chapter 4 gives us just this insight to where the Lord speaks to him. And here's what it says. I'm going to read from it, all right? It says, Then another message came to me from the Lord. Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundation of this temple, and he will complete it. So again, God's promising he's going to finish his work. Then you will know that the Lord of heaven's armies has sent me. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand. The 7 lamps represented the eyes. So it goes on to say what they represented. But the big part here is not despising small beginnings, because the Lord he rejoices to see the work begin. And so in us, a lot of times I think we see this huge temple that has to be built, and we look around at the resources we can see, and we think it's never going to happen.
right.
This is impossible. And here's the Lord saying, do not despise these small beginnings. Small changes have big impact. And I think that's just perfect.
Because you can only build the temple one stone at a time anyway.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And not to get too far down this path, but there's this old story of, a king who sent his messenger out to see the state of the people because the people weren't doing well. So the king sent the messenger out, and he goes around and he goes to this group of mason workers who are working on this building. And he goes to one and he says, you there laying the brick, what's your state? How are you doing? And the guy's like, man, this is terrible. He said, I hate my work. I'm here every day, all day. I only get paid, just pennies a day, barely enough to eat. The king doesn't care. I'm just here putting this brick by brick by brick, and there's no purpose to it. So the messenger was discouraged, but he decided, I'm going to ask one more person. So he rode, kept going, so he found another mason worker, and he said, you there, what's the state of your affair and how are you feeling? And the guy looked at him with a big smile on his face. Same job, same thing. And he looked up and he said, can't you see? I'm building a cathedral. Like I'm part of something that's going to impact this world for years and years to come.
That's awesome.
And in that aspect, it's just our perspective, right? It's just these small little tweaks and changes that we can make that will have big impact. So as we bring this topic to an end, small changes, big impact. Do you have anything you want to say to our listeners? Any encouragement?
Just don't be overwhelmed. Again, it's just a small step in the right direction will change so much for you. So don't be scared to take that first step.
Yeah, that's a great one. And that you don't even know another episode that we recorded is Choose Faith Over Fear. I love it because it's going to go right into it. And that's actually going to be our next episode with Ben Jones is Choose Faith Over Fear. So perfect plug right there. Good segue. I love it. I'm Mike here with my other friend here and contributor, Mike. And we just encourage you to, again, just like he said, try not to be overwhelmed by everything happening in life. Try to see it, one decision, one step, one day at a time, and trust God to take care of the rest. But until next time, stay alive in Him.